Hey, family. Welcome to the tribe. I am your host, Octavius Davis.
Hey family, welcome to the tribe called family.
Have another delightful person to introduce you to who's making a phenomenal impact as well on the system of care. But I'm not going to steal her thunder whatsoever. I want her to be able to tell you a little bit about herself. So please welcome to today's show, Shewan Mason. Shewan, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Glad to have you. Thank you for carving time out to join us today. So, Shuan, I alluded to it that you're making a great impact on the child welfare system, foster care, as some people know it as. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about you. Let's help our listening audience understand a little bit about who Shuan is. Shuan, take it away. Who are you? Where are you from? What should the listeners know about you?
Yeah, so I grew up in a very small town in Ohio. I was exposed to the child welfare system when I was a child. My grandparents actually did some fostering, and I grew up with my grandparents kind of in an extended family environment. Which was a great experience for me. My grandparents did a little bit of fostering as I was growing up, so I had a slight experience to it, not a whole lot. But I was kind of just under the impression that everybody had these great family systems that, you had your grandparents and your aunts and all these people around you of your village that, if you were kind of going through a hard time or struggling, like these different people could step in and help you with your kids. And me as a child and my brother growing up, we just always had a lot of support from our family. My mom had support. Um, and then as I grew up, I realized that's not the case for a lot of families and children who are out there. And it really just touched my heart to want to step in and be that support system in that family for people who don't have the same type of experience that I had growing up.
Shu, and you mentioned that as you got older, you began realizing that not everyone had that ecosystem of support when it comes to family. Do you
Mhm.
recall what that first instance was when that came to your understanding?
Yeah, I think I was just kind of like noticing in my friend group. One of my friends had a parent who had passed away, and then they had their aunts who lived far away, and was just kind of like, I'm kind of alone here. And I'm like, wow, like that's strange. Like, how are you alone? Or COVID happened as well. And my now husband, we were not married at the time, but we were watching the news together, and they were talking about how there's these rise in children who were potentially being neglected or not really cared for, as now they were not able to attend school in person and not have as many eyes on them. And I was just kind of thinking, like, do they not have like family in their house or different things? And it was just kind of really like just all coming together for me of like, yeah, like that's not the same experience that everyone has.
Certainly. And so here it is. You begin realizing that not everyone has that support system in place with family. As you mentioned, you came along with a very extended family and all those support systems already in place. Got older. Now, let me ask the time frame from when you began noticing that your friend groups and that their dynamic was a little bit different when it came to home and family, and then you starting a family of your own. What type of time frame are we looking at from that occurrence with your friend group to you getting married?
Well, interestingly enough, my husband and I began fostering before we were married.
Wow.
Couple. It was during COVID when we saw that news article, and we were watching the news. That really laid extremely heavy on our heart of different children who might need help, or a higher case of removals from children of their family due to neglect or lack of care, or people losing their jobs and not able to care for children in the same way. Or and we reached out and we're just trying to think of like how could we help in these situations, because we were both working and pretty stable individuals, where we were not married, but we felt that there was things that we could do. And so we began taking classes to become foster parents, and we actually began fostering together as an unmarried couple living together at the time, as we were engaged. But just because of COVID, we were unable to have our wedding, but we did not want that to hold us back from helping children and families in need. So we decided to go for it anyways.
And that is so amazing because not only was the world going up in flames
Mhm.
essentially when COVID hit the scene, but you and your fiance at the time, you see this news article, you hear about the reality of what many children are experiencing in your community. Now, I have to ask, you say that that the two of you saw that story together. Did it take a little bit more convincing for one versus the other when it came to going down that path of beginning to foster? And if so, which one needed to be convinced a little bit more?
I think we were pretty equally on board with it in the beginning. I think the when it came to actually taking placements in our home, that is always kind of been like, we did not have any children of our own, and so we were going from two, I mean, we're engaged, but two single people who work full time to now jumping into instant family, trying to figure out how to co parent together and take in children. And we instantly took a placement of three siblings,
Wow.
very first placement. And so, yeah, we went from, living a very self-centered in a way type of life to now a very serving life of being a parent and trying to co-parent with a biological family and learning how to parent with each other, as we'd never been in that situation together. And so it was a big change in our relationship and our dynamic, and then also just trying to navigate what types of children we feel are a good fit for us, and how many children were a good fit for our home. Sometimes there have been where I have felt maybe like, oh yeah, we could take another placement, and he's been like, I'm feeling like no, I think we're good.
Right. Like, time out, coach. I need
Yeah.
a breather. Now, Shuan, you just shared a lot of great information, and I want to take a moment to unpack some of what you just shared so that our listening audience can understand some of these different dynamics. So let's rewind just for a moment. You stated that you and your fiance at the time received your first placement when you were not yet married.
Yes.
Oftentimes, people assume in order to foster, you have to be married
Mhm.
if you're living with a partner. So, talk to us briefly about that aspect of your journey because the two of you weren't married. Were there any concerns on whether you'd be turned away due to not yet being officially married?
Honestly, we did not really think about it. We just kind of were pretty optimistic. We kind of jumped in. At that point, we did not think that COVID was going to be as big of a deal as it ended up being. And so when we reached out about taking the classes to become foster parents, which are called Pride classes, we were like, yeah, the classes are going to start in August. Our wedding's in October, so it's fine. But in October, the world was still shut down and we were not getting married in October. So that did not work out. But our instructor and then our licensing agent and everyone just saw that we were committed to each other and committed to helping children and families. And so as we were going through our home study and doing our classes together, it just was not really a concern to anyone because they saw that we were both equally on board, and that we were in it together with each other as partners to do this experience.
Hey, family, you're listening to a Tribe Called Family podcast. I'm Octavius Davis. I'm having the pleasure right now of speaking with Shewan. She's sharing with us her journey as a foster parent, but also what led up to her and her one time fiance, now husband, becoming foster parents together. You mentioned that your very first placement was a sibling group of three little people.
Hmm.
Why did you agree to take on a sibling group with your very first placement? Why is that for you?
So when we were taking our classes, there is a big need for foster parents to accept siblings in their home because in foster care, a lot of times siblings get separated from each other because there might not be a home that could take all of the siblings together, especially when there's a mix of boys and girls together or a mix of different ages that might have a big age gap because some homes only want to take small children, or some homes only are equipped to take older children. And so we had decided that we were really wanting to try to focus on doing sibling groups. And so, yeah, that was just kind of our heart at the time to try to keep siblings together and do what we could to accept groups of siblings so that they would not have to be separated and be able to continue to at least have each other while going through this experience.
And that is so very important for those siblings to be able to stay together as best as possible because you and I were speaking very briefly before we began recording. Anytime a child is removed from the home, from the onset, trauma is now induced in that child's life. That trauma then becomes even larger if it's a sibling group and now you have to separate those siblings and they be in different homes. So, without, of course, exposing the identity of the young people whom you had an opportunity to take in for your first placement, what did you and your husband notice as they were placed with you and began going about just that whole process with their situation?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it was their second time being in the system. So there was a lot of trauma from having to go through the process one time and then going back home. And then now this was the second time. And so they did have a lot of different behaviors that were maybe not typical of their age. One of the children acted younger than they would have been, or maybe you would have expected them to be potty trained, but they weren't potty trained. So they do have some differing behavioral activities that might not be of a typical child that you would normally see. But when you are taking the classes, you do have guidance of how to deal with those types of situations and the best ways to try to parent those types of situations. So that way you can try to be sensitive to the needs of the children, and not trying to be like, why are you using the bathroom? Like, you're 5 years old. You should be going to
Right.
where it's just kind of like, it's okay, buddy, like accidents happen, I know you're going through a hard time, like, you try and pee in the potty next time, move on. It's not really that big of a deal. Um, so yeah, we do have guidance in the classes and continuing education that is offered of different types of parenting styles that work really well with trauma children, which has been great. So there is a lot of help for trying to help you and give you support in dealing with those things. But yeah, it can be difficult for sure. Yeah.
And thank you for taking the time to really break that down because there are misconceptions that comes along with the foster care system, children who are in the foster care system, but also the behaviors associated with children who are going through that process in foster care. Now, if I may, for a moment, I'm going to rewind the clock a couple of years ago, maybe a decade ago. There was this movie that came out. I think it was called Orphan. And this movie is essentially about this child. It's positioned as this is a child at the beginning of the movie. Later on, you realize it's a full grown adult, but it's positioned that there's this child. And throughout the movie, she's involved in all of these sinister activities that sabotages this family who welcomed her into the home. And what I notice is that a lot of times there are movies in Hollywood that perpetuates this stigma that all children coming through that vein of foster care of some sort have these huge challenges or behavioral issues that can be threatening to the livelihood and the existence of those individuals in the home. But what you just shared was that there was trauma that these young people were experiencing, but it wasn't the over the top push you off a roof type of situation that Hollywood may glamorize. It was a bit more day-to-day challenges that these kids were facing, but you and your husband met those young people with compassion.
Yeah. And you kind of have to just think about what they've been through. I mean, a lot of times the children have, been taken away from their parents. You have to think about what that would be like for you. If you were a child, you don't understand. Sometimes they think it's their fault, even though it's not. But, they're a child. They don't have the mind and the ability to understand what all is going on. So they're scared. You're a stranger to them and they have to live with you in a place they've never been and maybe go to a school they've never been. And I know we had a dog when our one of the kids we've taken into our home had never been around a dog before, and so there's just all of these new things sometimes that they're just getting tossed at them,
Right.
and sometimes people are just like, it's okay, like be fine with it, but you also have to understand like it's a lot for them and they're just little people trying to process everything that's going on and their brains and their bodies are just not fully developed to be able to handle these big situations that we're asking them to accept and process. So
And it
definitely,
requires some trust building there as well.
yes.
And so that trust is earned, by the way. So during that trust building process, with all those things that you just mentioned that the kids were experiencing, do you recall when you or your husband noticed that you had earned their trust as you were helping them through that process?
Yeah, I think it kind of just depends on the child. Each child kind of has a lot of their own different experiences based on different traumas that they had been through. I know we once had a child who was living in a hotel for a very long time
Mm,
and did not have access to like homemade food. And so they only ate food that was from a can for, I think, years, like a long time. And they didn't trust food that came like on a
mm,
plate or was like a hot meal. And they only wanted to eat canned food. And so, if you tried to make them like a plate, and you would think it was great, like, oh, you don't want to eat this canned food. Like, I just made you like a fresh hot plate of spaghetti. Like, that's awesome. You should love this. But it just wasn't what they were used to. It wasn't what they trusted. Like, they've never had that before. Like, it's not what they want. Um, and so, yeah, just having to kind of balance exposing them to new things and building that kind of trust, but still being respectful of their boundaries and their lived experience. But then you can also kind of see, like, I'm going to eat beside you the food that I want, but I'm going to respect that you want to eat the food that you want. And so you can watch me eat the food that I want to eat, and you can eat the food that you want to eat. And I'm fine. Like, I'm eating this food and it's healthy for me. And if one day you want to try it, you can. I will make you a plate and you can choose whether you want to have it or not have it, but you can still have the food that you feel safe and comfortable eating. And then, one day you might see them like, poke at it a little bit or, sniff it or something, and then finally try a bite. And so, you just know that you kind of have eventually caved away at that to earn their trust. And that is definitely a rewarding experience because you have been able to, allow them to overcome some of the trauma that they went through, but also open up a whole new world for them.
Let's take a different turn with the conversation because something we haven't even touched on yet. Uh, your family has done a stellar job with creating an environment where children feel welcomed to be themselves, even if that child may identify as being part of the LGBTQ plus community. So, talk with us about just that dynamic and that experience of your family intentionally making an environment comfortable for young people, regardless of their gender orientation.
Yes. So I think it is just kind of the same as everything else. People are who they are. And especially at this age of wanting to experiment and figure out who you are, and you want to just try different things. And maybe today I want to wear a pink shirt or a black shirt, or I want to try to, be goth a little bit, or I want to listen to this music or that music. Everyone just is wanting to figure themselves out. And I think it's best to just allow space for that. And then also to just accept whatever it is that they have decided that that is who they are and what they want to be, because they are people, like just like we are people. And I think just because they are younger or smaller does not mean that they're less worthy of love or respect. And so that is just the environment that we create in our home.
That's definitely the safe haven that you've created at home. How do you prepare them for when they go outside of the home and they may go into some environments they may not feel as safe?
I think just knowing that they have a place that is accepting and safe also just helps, because not everywhere is accepting and loving of you no matter what. Not everywhere, not everybody likes me, you know.
Sure.
And so I think just always just preparing our children for that, and just saying, like, no matter what, there's always going to be people who might say mean things to you, but you know who you are, and you know you are worthy, and you know that you are great and amazing, and we know that you are great and amazing, and that we love you and you are loved. And so we have to just believe that and internalize that. And sometimes if I feel that my children are not internalizing that, I will start to like leave them inspirational notes. We have one of our bathrooms is our teen bathroom, basically, that they all use. And so I will write on the mirror with like a dry erase marker little kind of like words of affirmation or inspirational
Mhm.
messages. So that way, as they're getting ready or in the shower, different stuff, and they look in the mirror, they see all of these little positive messages to themselves. And sometimes they read it, sometimes they don't. But it's
But it's there for them. If they want it, it's there for them.
exactly. It's there for them. And, I don't know how they're feeling all of the time, but I think they know that if they need it, it's there, and they can, see positive things for themselves. And the community has some great resources as well to plug into. Like we have Jasmine, which is great. They have some support groups that you can go to, and just trying to help them plug into different places where we know that they do feel loved and supported, and that there are other people who are like them and going through similar things like them, so that they can build a network of people who relate and understand, and have that understanding and love and respect in more places than places where they are not loved and respected.
How many kids have you and your husband fostered at this point?
Oh, so many.
I was curious on whether or not you had that number, like, right at the top of your head.
I know. This is always a debate between us, because we have some kids who only stay for like one night, where it's just kind of like a transitional, like, we really just need some help for like one night. And then we are like, do we count those kids or do we not count those kids? Oh, like it's questionable. But I would say more than 50. We have
Wow.
a lot of different children come through our home. Yeah, and it's been very fun and interesting. And there are a lot of them, as we do a lot of older children who are always on social media and different things. There are a lot of them who continue to still connect with our family, which is really nice, even if they go to family or if they move or different things. Like they might still call us or message us on Instagram or different things, which has been really fun to still like maybe you don't live with us anymore, but we still get to kind of see where you're at and be slightly involved in your life a little bit. And that is fun to just know that they're okay.
You are listening to A Tribe Called Family. This is the podcast where we have an opportunity to share with you many of the amazing people and the journey of so many others as they navigate the child welfare system. We're talking right now with Shewan Mason. She and her husband began fostering during the pandemic. They weren't yet married, but they both saw a news story that inspired them to move forward with the process of becoming foster parents. And from that day to this day, according to Shewan, they have fostered nearly over 50 young people so far. Shewan, why do the two of you continue to do it?
Because there's a need to. There is such a need in the community, and it really is something special. We have a child this weekend, actually, who is going back home to their parents, where their parents
Amazing.
worked for the past 10 or 11 months. They have done everything that they needed to do to complete the steps to get this child back. And the child is so excited to get to go back home. And we are excited for the family, and everyone is happy. And these types of situations, for sure, are just definitely ones that just help keep you going in the hard times, because you know that there have been, a lot of happy stories out there too, where it might not always be easy every single day, but there are a lot of great times and a lot of good endings, and good stories and good people out there too. Like a lot of parents who are really just good people when you get to know them, who, maybe they just had a little bit of a hard time or something happened to them, but they really love their kids.
You made this point earlier. Any child that's in foster care is not there due to any fault of their own. That's number one.
Mhm.
Number two, the parents, the families whom the children have been removed from, as you just stated, they're people, many of which good people, they just ran into a hard time and need some additional support and assistance. Have you and your husband been in contact regularly with the biological parents as the children have been in your home?
Yes, we always try to. As long as they are accepting of that, we
Sure.
always try to be as involved with them as possible, because we want them to know that we help support them. We have their child in our home, and so we want to build that kind of network and team with them to where we can freely communicate about the child and be able to send them photos and updates, and that way they still feel that they're very involved in their child's life. And I think that that also helps them stay motivated and to give them encouragement to, do the things that they need to do to, be able to get their child back, because they're still constantly involved in their child's life. It doesn't really feel that anyone has, in essence, like completely removed their child away.
Right.
We are all just trying to help you and support you, and we all want you to do the things that you need to do. And so I think that that has been very encouraging, especially to biological families. A lot of times in the beginning, they're just scared and they're worried, and they want to know that their kids are taken care of. And so having that opportunity to reach out and to say, hi, like, I'm Shuin, I have your child here. They're doing okay. They're a little scared, but, I gave them a blanket. We read a story, and now they're sleeping well. So, it's going to be all right. Feel free to call me or send me a text, or, if it is allowed, I will let them just say hello to their child quickly, or different things. And I think that just becomes reassuring to everyone, the child and the family as well, because then the child also knows, like, okay, this person is like a gateway to my parents, who I love so much. And the parent also knows, like, you're not trying to just steal and take away my child.
Right. Exactly.
We all get to just kind of try to come together and just be like, what do we need to do to try to be the best support for the child? Because really, foster and biological parents working together is what is best for the child.
And it really does create the tribe called family because you're letting the biological family know that, hey, we're here as a support system. We want to rally behind you any way that we can help. As you mentioned, those things that are allowable because there is, a case plan that has to be followed. But these kids are now being reunited with their biological family. That is huge,
Yeah.
tremendous, because at the end and beginning of the day for us, getting the child reestablished with their biological parent, that's the goal.
Hmm.
That is the goal. So that's outstanding that you and your husband have been there for them and now able to help celebrate them as they prepare to transition to head back home with their biological families. So, another question for you, Shu, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you and your husband have also adopted. Is that correct?
Yes, we have adopted three children. Now we have adopted a teenager. We adopted her when she was 16 years old. She came to our house when she was 15. And now she is in 2 weeks going to have her 18th birthday. So
Wow.
we will be our first adult child legally. That will be a different experience for sure. And then we also have adopted biological sisters that are 2 and 1 year old. And we adopted them separately at different times.
Your family is growing and expanding. You have adoptive children now. You have foster children that excuse me, kids in foster care whom you're having an opportunity to love on as well. How much longer do you and your husband see yourselves continuing to impact these kids' lives? And do you have any interest or desire to make a larger impact in their lives?
Yeah, we hope to still continue to do this for a long time. There are a lot of different avenues to help in child welfare. So we feel that if there were to come a point in our life where we could not be on the front lines, hands on day to day, fostering with children in our home, because our own children who we've adopted have different needs themselves, that we would still always want to provide what's called respite care, which is being able to step in for short periods of time to give other foster families a break while they're on vacation or a weekend away or a short term where a child might be in between placements. That's something that we see ourselves doing for the long haul at that point. And so, that is kind of our plan. If we see ourselves still actively fostering for a good bit of time, but if it were to come a time where our family needs were to change, we would just switch to respite care because it is something that we feel very strongly on our hearts to continue to do. And it's something that we want to raise our children around. As we do have the one daughter who is going to be an adult, but we do have our two baby children who we adopted. One of them was in foster care herself. And so we want her to, and well, both of our young children, we want them to know that this is out there in the world, and we want them to kind of grow up with that type of a serving heart, to be able to help those around and know that there are children who might not have been able to have the same lived experience as them, and just be able to grow in that and have those types of experiences in their own coming up as well. We think that that's something that's important.
And Shu, and I want to highlight one quick point. You and your husband were graced with an amazing opportunity to adopt two younger children out of foster care. But I do want to highlight for our listening audience, whenever a child comes into foster care and you become a foster parent, getting that child reunited with their biological family, that is the goal. Foster to adopt is really an outdated and a misconstrued statement. So I don't want you to hear Shuan's story and think, okay, great, we'll become foster parents and then we'll adopt some babies. That's not exactly how that works. It's rare that a situation like that happens. So I just wanted to highlight that. Getting the kids reunited with their biological family is the goal. However, there are times when that child cannot be. reunified with their biological family, parental rights become terminated, and then that child becomes available for adoption. But sometimes it's not a child, it might be a teen. They're not all little babies. So I wanted to be certain that we highlight that fact. So Sean, before we get out of here, someone listening to this right now may have considered fostering or may have never considered fostering, but they have interest, but they may also have some concerns. What would you share with that individual to help them with taking that next step?
Yes, I think it is something that will greatly enrich your life if you consider becoming a foster parent. It has been a very enriching experience for me and my husband. It has changed us in ways that we did not know, but in a very positive way, because it has opened up our heart to a lot of things that we did not know existed in the world, and a lot of things that we had misconstrued our own self with the foster care system, where really, especially with biological parents, of knowing like I have never seen a situation where a child was taken away and their parents did not love them. And so just knowing that at the heart of all of it, like their parents love them. And there are just all these other circumstances going on, that caused a removal to happen or caused an abandonment to happen. And so, really, it has opened our eyes to a lot of things in a compassionate way, knowing that the world is different than we thought, but in a good way. And so, it was very helpful for you to go through the experience and to be able to help children and also help families, because it's not only about just the children, it is about the whole family unit together. And then also to be able to see at the end those times when a child does get to be reunified, with their parents or with other family members. We've had that happen several different times, and that has just been such a positive and loving experience, to be able to see. And so it really adds a lot of joy to your life. So don't let, a few negative stories that you might hear, hold you back from all of the positivity that it can add to your life.
You and let you know that, and I think Stevie Wonder said this many years ago, love is in need of love today. And compassion, empathy, and many of those other traits that Shewan and her family have been displaying towards the children who have graced their doorsteps, as well as the families they've been able to support, is all part of the game. So if you also would like to make a positive impact in the lives of these families, may Shewan's example be a great one for you as you consider moving forward in the process. Shewan, thank you so much. You and your family are a shining example of fostering and just loving on those kids, providing a safe and stable home. So thank you so much for all that you do. And thank you as well for hanging out with us today on A Tribe Called Family. We'll catch you next time.
Hey family, welcome to the tribe called